Share screen. Now, can everybody see the PowerPoint before you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Kita, sir.
Ano? Okay, so let's begin with Chapter 2 or Ethics in the Government Service. Before we start, can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay,
Yes.
so right before you is the seal of the government of the Republic of the Philippines. So this is your seal. It says there, Republika ng Pilipinas, maka-Diyos, makatao, makakalikasan, at makabansa. So, welcome to your second part of your topic, which is the ethics in the government service. So, there is a need for you to learn about the ethics in the government service so as not to pwede mo machismis in short. Pwede mo machismis sa inyong other co-departments and para walay mistrust among your constituents. So that is just the bottom line of why there is ethics in the government service. Anyway, so background. Ethics is one of the most perceived problems in the government service. Men and women in the government service are commonly accused of unethical and unprofessional conduct in the performance of their official functions. Like, for example, I went to a certain town in one of our constituents here in Davao Oriental in order to do official business with the municipality. And lo and behold, when I came upon this certain municipality, when I arrived, one certain public officer was missing. I asked, where is Miss blah blah blah? And then they told me, sir, nagpalimpyo og ngipon, nagpa-cleaning. Wow. At 9:30 a.m. in the morning, official time sa gobyerno, 9:30 a.m. nagpa-cleaning diha sa dentist. And I told them, if she doesn't come back here within 10 minutes, I will report that to the civil service. Report din si madam, oy, within 5 minutes, kailangan. Nagod ang fiscal. Ang fiscal ba is the law enforcement officer in the assigned where he in the area where he is assigned. Then I reminded her, ma'am, remember, the government is paying you to be in your seat during office hours, and you are not being paid at the moment for you to have your teeth cleaned in the dentist. Kasaba gid ko kay, I don't want to be, as a matter of fact, I hate waiting, especially if it's official time. Kay ako early gid ko naga especially in court. When the court says it's 8, the hearing will start at 8:30. I'll be there 30 minutes before the time. So moto. That's the reason why there are many unethical and unprofessional conduct here in our constituents, because they do not know what rules are. They do not know what the norms are, what are the standards are of being a public officer. Anyway, to continue, regardless of their governmental positions, mode of entry, or status, no one is immune in this public perception. So whether you are just contractual, whether you are permanent, whether you are appointive, whether you are elective, whether or not taas imong salary grade or mubo imong salary grade, we are all subjected to public perception, and hence, as public officers, we must conduct ourselves in a way which is ethical and professional in front of the public. So hence, a question may be asked, is there any standard set of ethics in a government service? But of course, the government cannot just leave its members without any guidelines on how to conduct themselves professionally and ethically. So you have here your different sources of ethical doctrines for government employees. Number one, there is your Section 1, Article 11 of the 1987 Constitution, which states that public office is a public trust. Ikapila rin yung naladonggan sa news. Public office is public trust. Public officers and employees must, at all times, be accountable to the people. Serve them with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency. act with patriotism and justice, and lead modest lives. When you say accountable to the people, they must be ready at all times to be subjected to inquiry. Like for example, if you are working as a prosecutor, you have to be accountable to the people by being there in your office, by showing your time to these people who are in dire of your services, and you must serve them with integrity, loyalty, and efficiency. Just because you're a public officer, you tanaw nimo you are in a pedestal, taas na kay ka. No, it's not. Actually, you are there in order to serve the people and not to be served upon. Now, you should act with patriotism, because as a public officer, you must uphold the Philippine flag. What else? Lead with justice, act with justice, and lead modest life. Act with justice, you have to be fair in your dealings with the people, especially in terms of services. And most importantly, lead modest lives. You need not show these people that you are rich, or usa ba kanang namagay uban na although they are already born rich, you have still, since you're in public service, you must have, or at least lang man, lead a modest life. You should not be a show off. Ayaw papakita na ingani ka, o na dato ka, or whatever. What else? What are other sources of your ethical doctrines for government employees? You have here your articles 203 to 245 of the revised penal code. Now, these are crimes committed by public officers. So, just to give you just a short overview, 203 to 245 are crimes which involve bribery, direct bribery, malversation of funds, what else? Failure to deliver the the um insubordination, mga ingana. There are a lot of crimes that involves public officers, but these are just some of them which are very common. Labi na ng mga bribery, indirect bribery, and malversation of public funds. So these are very common because we all know when you are in public office, sometimes we have this perception na kurakot pa na siya. Ginakuha mo na siya, mo na nadato na kay naasaya ang kaban ng bayan, 'di ba? So it's disheartening because when you are a public officer and you try to lead by example, and because of the culture we have here in the Philippines, that being in public office means learning how to rob the government of money. Parang ang pangit pakinggan. And here I am trying to do my best to be the best that I can be, so that in the image of the people, I am a modest and a ethical public official. But then again, we have people who tend to overcome that perception by being korakot. So anyway, moving on, you have here the very famous Republic Act 6713, or the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. We are going to tackle that today. What else? Republic Act 3019, or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Republic Act 7080, or the Anti-Plunder Act. Republic Act 9485, or the Anti-Red Tape Act, and etc. So these are just some of your sources of ethical doctrines for government employees. Okay, so high ethical standards in public service is a state policy, meaning it is required under the 1987 Constitution to have high ethical standards when you enter public service. It is the policy of the state to promote a high standard of ethics in public service. Why? Because public officials and employees should at all times be accountable to the people and shall discharge their duties with utmost responsibility, integrity, competence, and loyalty, act with patriotism and justice, lead modest lives, and uphold public interest over personal interest. Now, the reason why taas ang standards in public service is because we are in the public eye. We public officials are in the public eye. Any unethical, any slight unethical or unprofessional conduct we display will most likely destroy the image of our office. So that is the reason why taas ang standards in public service. Like for example, among us public prosecutors or your fiscals in the region, gabi ang amo ang standards dapat you must have not been convicted of a crime, especially kana kay ulaw po da imong piskal numero unong basagulero day kayo, di ba? Very unethical and very unprofessional, and it does not match with the office you are trying to enter to. Labi na kamo police officers, when you become police officers, you must have squeaky clean image in front of the public. Why? Because you are law enforcers. Diba? Any questions so far? Questions? Violent reactions? Ayo.
Sir,
Okay lang mo.
okay na sir.
Pangutana mo ha, kung na may pangutana. Alright, sige, let's move on. Now, the government's obligation to its citizen, according to one Richard de George, the government has no right to harm its citizens. It has an obligation to help them to the extent possible. The government is not an individual, but a servant of all people. If you remember the speech of Pinoy, he said, kayo po ang aming boss. Which is, kasi tinuod ba yung ginaingon? The people is the repository or the source of the governmental powers, and all government powers emanate from them. Hence, we public officers must serve the people and not the other way around. Okay. Balik-balik. Public office is a public trust. So, as public officers and employees, we must at all times be accountable to the people, serve them with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency, act with patriotism and justice, and lead modest lives. According to one justice of the Supreme Court in the person of Justice Malcolm, the basic idea of the government in the Philippines is that it is a representative government, meaning the officers being mere agents and not the rulers of the people. One where no one man or set of men has a propriety or contractual right to an office, but where every officer accepts office pursuant to the provisions of law and upholds the office as a trust for the people whom he represents. Meaning, we public officers, you, future police officers, and I, as your public prosecutor in the government, we are just agents. We are just servants to the people, and we are not the rulers here. As a matter of fact, we are here to serve the public. Muna magkatawahay ba na? Oh, overtime lagi ka, fiscal ko, lagi kay servisyo publiko. Ano ba? You have to do everything you can in order to serve the public. What else? Justice Malcolm wants us to learn that just because you are a prosecutor does not mean that you have every right to be in that position. No, you are in that position because you are called upon by the government to represent your the people, to be there and to help and serve the people. Mo gina ang always ginabalik-balik. Represent and serve. Wait, may nag-chat. Excuse me, sir. Stable signal na ako, sir. Basta matingala ka, sir. Sige kong leave. It's okay. I understand. Okay, next. What does the command to lead modest life entail? Nagkan kay mga public officers who are guilty of leading a modest life. So when you say leading a modest life, it means even if the public officer is independently wealthy, he should not live in a manner that flaunts his wealth. So for example, daghang magyug dato na dato na daan na nag-enter of public service. But since you entered public service, there is a mandate here that you should live a modest life. So you should be frugal, you should be simple, humble in terms of the way you speak, in terms of the way you manamit ka, in terms of how you flaunt yourself in front of the public. This is the reason why um the reason why the government wants you to be as such is because the bottom line of being in public service is to serve and not the other way around. So dapat humble ta, frugal ta. And if we have this display of luxury manggod, or if we display our wealth, chances are the perception of the public would be, ay, kinawat pa na iyahang unsa. Kinawat pa na iyahang mga gamit. So, di ba? Backfire gihapon sa tuwa. So it says here, lead a clean and frugal life. Do not indulge in frivolity or pretense. Be simple in your dress and modest in your behavior. As a matter of fact, kami mga fellow lawyers, mga tawa may ani kami nasa government service ba, murag ano ba to kong friend. Sa man murag ginapunggan natong pagkanato. Although makatawa ko, but I understand where the government is coming from, and I also understand my friend na gusto gani walang-wala man gud sila sa una, and karon naana siya, may gusto niya pakabongga pud ba, pero I understand her part. Pero again, once you're in public service, you have to lead a modest life. Ana lang. Sanay naman ko ano because my parents are born and raised here in Baganga, and they were trained in a manner wherein na although we have money, you must learn how to be frugal, learn how to be humble, learn how to lead a simple life. So that's how my parents were trained, and that's how they trained me also. So, all right. So, muna ni. You know these people well. So, recovery of properties unlawfully acquired by public officials. So, it is the right of the state to recover properties unlawfully acquired by public officials or employees from them or from their nominees or transferees, and shall not be barred by prescription, laches, or estopel. If a public official or employee unlawfully acquires wealth, properties, or unsa pa man siya coming from the state has every right to recover, meaning bawion sa imuha kung unsa tong imong gi unlawfully acquired, or in short kung unsa imong gi kawat. And no matter how long nagikawat, for example, gikawat nimo ni let's say in 1950s pa nimo gikawat as a public servant, no matter how long that was, it will not be barred by prescription. Prescription is that mode of time wherein you can exercise your right on a prescription. That just is you have left parang biyaan mo imong rights, and wala kay pwede iingon because barred na ka. Marag pabayaan nimo, and so pwede is pangka na ka. Wala na pasabot ana. So in short, whether or not time has passed by, whether or not recent lang na, if the state found out that you have unlawfully acquired property or money or whatever is that, it will recover that property from you at all costs. As a matter of fact, I have a case here pending in dili ako ang naikaso, but I am the I am currently prosecuting a former public officer because this public officer abused his position way back in 1990s to 2000s. What he did was he acquired several titles of properties which were supposed to be given to qualified individuals such as the poor or kung sino man mga mag-uuma. But then again, what he did was he somewhat transferred these titles under his name. And what's worse, gipangalan pa niya sa iyang asawa o sa iyang mga kamag-anak. So currently, I am litigating. I am the one prosecuting him right now because baga kay siya now 16 kabuok katitulo iyang pangalan sa iyang pamilya. So baga kay siya now. So that is the right of the state to recover property unlawfully acquired by public officials. If you're wondering, anong fiscal man ang nag-unsa, di ba dapat ombudsman man or ang ombudsman man dapat ang nag-unsa na. Remember, all the office of the ombudsman and the office of the prosecution service are under the executive department of the Department of Justice. So, if daghan kay workload ang ombudsman, they may assign us to represent them. So that's why heavy ang workload sa prosecutor. We do not just act as law enforcement officers within our respective jurisdiction, but we also serve as vanguards or guardians against public officials who are kawatans of the kaban ng bayan. Any questions so far?
Wala, sir.
Na? Okay. So nasabtan ha na the state can recover property from you if they found out that you have unlawfully acquired properties. All right. So as public officers or employees, we must have allegiance to the state and to the Constitution. Alam nga naman, how can you serve properly if you do not have allegiance to the Republic of the Philippines and especially to the Constitution? Now, public officers and employees, when you say EE, employees na ha, and when you say ER, employer, parang smoothen or mapaspas ako ang discussion. Public officers and employees owe to the state and Constitution allegiance at all times. And any public officer or employee who seeks to change his citizenship or acquire the status of an immigrant of another country during his tenure shall be dealt with by law. In short, what the government wants is a servant who is of Filipino citizenship, who has pure allegiance to the state and who has pure allegiance to the Constitution and not to any other country or any other constitution. Why? What magbutang ka dihag foreigner sa government? What if double agent na? What if he is there to disrupt the government of the Philippines? What if he is there to spy on us? Diba? So, when you want to improve your government system, of course, you have to put there only of the purest of the pure, and that means a pure Filipino citizen. Diba? So, muna. Pero po, nowadays, the problem with the government is that they have a trouble of having allegiance to the state and the Constitution because of their political beliefs. Like, for example, many of the public officers are, let's say, pro-Lenny. Some of the public officers and employees are pro-Marcos, pro-Digong, pro-or whatever. So, na-divide ta. Remember, as public officer, your allegiance is supposed to be to the state and to the Constitution and not to these political leaders. Muna ginatawag na to, if you ask me personally, what are you for? To whom is your allegiance recognized to? Ako, ang tubag din ako always, I am for the Constitution and I am for the rule of law. Pasabot, I am faithful and loyal to the state and I have my full confidence to the Constitution. Whatever the rule is, I should follow. So, more lang pasabot. Now, who are those persons covered by Republic Act 6713 or the Code of Ethics for the government employees? The law covers all officials and all employees in the government service, whether or not you are elective and appointive, permanent or temporary, whether in the career or non-career service, including military and police personnel, whether or not they receive compensation or not, regardless of the amount. So, those are individuals that are covered by Republic Act 6713. Now, question. Kaming mga public prosecutors, unsa mi? We are not elective public officials. We are appointed. We are appointed, as a matter of fact, by the president, by none other himself but the president of the Philippines. That's why we are appointive officials. We are appointed to our positions. What else? Yeah. Any questions so far? Walay pangutana? Sabtantanan? Dali naman siya sabto, no? Sige.
Yes, sir.
Wala, sir.
Okay, so let's move on to Republic Act 6713 for the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. Okay, so there are certain terms that you should be familiar with. One of these terms should be naka-enumerate karon. So when you say government, it includes the national government, the local governments, and all other instrumentalities, agencies, or branches of the Republic of the Philippines, including government-owned or controlled corporations and their subsidiaries. In short, when you say the government, tanan, including the national government, the LGUs, the executive department, the legislative department, the judiciary, the government-owned controlled corporations, and its subsidiaries. So what are public officials? Public officials include elective and appointive officials and employees, permanent or temporary, whether in the career or non-career service, including military and police personnel, whether or not they receive compensation, regardless of the amount. Now, what is a gift? It refers to a thing or a right to dispose of gratuitously. When you say gratuitously, gikan sa imong kabubuton, gihatag nimo, or any act or liberality in favor of another who accepts it, and shall include a simulated sale or an ostensibly onerous disposition thereof. When you say simulated sale, sige, let's fake na binenta ko to sa iyo, but it's not. As a matter of fact, there is no sale. As a matter of fact, there's just a donation that has transpired or gihatag lang nimo. What now? Usa pa ni, ostensibly onerous disposition. When you say onerous disposition, you dispose a certain thing by, let's say, having a sale, or let's say, iprenda nako. When you say onerous, that means burdensome. So an onerous disposition is you give away something out of sale, out of mortgage or prenda, or what ba? Ano? And then it shall not include an unsolicited gift of nominal or insignificant value not given in anticipation of or in exchange for a favor from a public official or employee. Now, nga nang gibutang diri ang gift? Because ang gift may be used to bribe you as a public official, or may be used to induce you to do something which you are not supposed to do. So, mo nagibutang diha ang gift na word. So, unsa ba exception ani, sir? Namagay uban man good, for example, in my office, because of the services that I have given to these people for free, sometimes manggod malipay maning mga tao, di ba? Hay, salamat fiscal kay na nadaog ka. Hay, salamat fiscal kay na meet yun na to ang justice. So dili malikayan mo hatag sila og, let's say ha, sa kuha kapilan ni nahitabo sa kuha, nahatagan ako manok, nahatagan ako banana, nahatagan ako crabs, nahatagan ako isda, you name it, nahatagan ako ingana. So for me, that is not a gift because of the last paragraph, the last sentence of the paragraph, which nakabutang niya, a gift shall not include an unsolicited gift of nominal or insignificant value not given in anticipation of or in exchange for a favor from a public official or employee. Meaning, dili ko mahadlok na usama ko ganun, ipaslak na sa kuang table ba kung naman ako mabuhat. Okay, sige. Exception man ni sa bribery because this is just an unsolicited gift or a gift of nominal or insignificant value given to me because yun nga, because of nagpasalamat sila or because I did not ask anything from them. So, mao na siya. You have to delineate the term gift from what is a unsolicited gift of nominal or insignificant value. Nakuha ninyo?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sure, ha? So, for example, come on, sooner or later, let's say, you were able to save someone's life. So that person was very thankful. So he gave you a lechon. So you may receive it. Why? Because you did not solicit it from these people. Wala maka na sa'yo. Sige. Salbaron ako ang inyong pamilya ron, pero hatangi ko pinakababoy diha. Wala maka ingon ana. But instead, it was from their own volition, and let's say maybe for them kumuhatag sila baboy sa mga insignificant sa ila. So muna exception na siya, ha. Kay para pod makatuon mo kung unsa ang mga exception sa balaod, unsa ang pwede na gifts na pwede niyo madawat o unsa po na pwede niyo dili dawaton. Okay? So unsa ang mga dili pwede dawaton? For example, Sir Police Staff Sergeant, kanang nako ipadakop si mo hatagan tika 1 million. Kana there is already a favor there on the part being asked from you. So that is already bribery on the part of the police officer, and he may be held criminally, civilly, and administratively liable. Okay? Any questions so far, guys? Please be honest. Questions? Clarifications? None?
Wala, sir.
Okay. Sige.
Sir, ay,
Sige. Ano man?
sa katong sa gift ka ni sir sa to. Ay, si magusir kawala akong signal, sig ko out.
Sir, unsay meaning sa gift, sir?
Ha?
Unsay meaning sa gift?
Sa gift. Kani refers to a thing or a right to dispose of gratuitously or any act of labor in favor of another who accepts it, and shall include a simulated sale or an ostensibly onerous disposition thereof. Pero, ang gift, dili siya mag-fall or it shall not include an unsolicited gift of nominal or insignificant value, not given in anticipation of or in exchange for a favor from a public official or employee. Meaning, if nagpasalamat lang sila sa imuha tungod kay wapo ang imong performance as a public officer, which is you should do at all times, pwede mo siya dawaton because unsolicited man siya, meaning wa makanangayo gikan sa ilaha, murag gihatag naman sa imuha because this is just of nominal or insignificant value na gihatag nako sa imuha. So, you may receive it if you want. Pero lahi na pag if muduol sa imuha police officer, nako ipadakop sa imuha tagan tigag 1 million kana, lahi na siya. Ibang usapan na yun. Lahi na siya nag-gift. Gift na gina siya na in its gift na ihatag sa imuha because na ay pabor na gipangayo sa imuha. Nakuha?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Sige. Okay. Receiving any gift includes the act of accepting directly or indirectly a gift from a person other than a member of his family or relative as defined in this act. Even on the occasion of a family celebration or national festivity like Christmas, if the value of the gift is neither nominal nor insignificant, or the gift is given in anticipation of or in exchange for a favor. So, when you say receiving any gift, it could either be directly or indirectly. So, when you say directly, sige, hatag na ko ang gift sa mo. So, imong giabre imong palad, giana nimo. So, that is directly receiving, or for example, abrihan nimo imuhang pocket, imuhang bag, or butang diha ang gift. Kana, that is directly receiving. So, unsa ang indirectly receiving? For example, sir, ataghanti kag 1 million if dako nimo si letter A. Sige, sige, sige. Butang lang ng kwarta diha sa hunos. O kana. That is indirect receiving of the gift. Now, what else? What's happening? Terms that you should know. Loan. What is a loan? It covers both simple loan and comodatum, as well as guarantees, financing arrangements, or accommodations intended to ensure its approval. So, nalum na mga words, right? So, when you say simple loan, ingayon siya. May I borrow money from you in the amount of 5,000 pesos? I will return the money after 1 month. So, mo nang simple loan. Ang comodatum, may I borrow your car or may I borrow your pen for this week? I will return it after 1 week. So, in short, ang difference ano nila, ang loan, ang simple loan refers more on money and comodatum refers more on movable properties. Kung sa maning guarantees. For example, I am a person who has money and letter B has no money. So letter C, as a good friend, borrowed money from me so that he can give it to letter B. So that is a guarantee. Ikaw iti guarantee na mubayad para sa kanmo amigo tungod kay ikaw man you boss ng sapi gikan kana. What else? Yeah, kana. Same lang na siya with accommodation parties. Same lang na siya with guarantees. Any questions so far? Nasabtan ang loan? Loan, mangutang. So, when you
Yes,
say
sir.
loan,
Okay.
it does not just involve money. It also involves the borrowing of movable properties such as your car, your pen, your bike, your motorcycle. Ay po nang, may I borrow your husband, may I borrow your wife, or may I borrow your girlfriend? Hindi na siya loan, ha? That is already not covered under loan. Any questions so far? Wala. Sige.
Okay na, sir.
Wala,
Okay.
sir.
Substantial stockholder means any person who owns, directly or indirectly, shares of stock sufficient to elect a director of a corporation. This term shall also apply to parties to a voting trust. Okay, in a corporation, Mango, there are individuals whom we call as stockholders. Stockholders because nasa shares sa korporasyon. Now, you are called a substantial stockholder if you have a substantial amount of stocks in a certain corporation, enough for you to be elected as a director. So pasabot, dako-dako gid imuhang shares of stock ana. Nganong ibutang nato substantial stockholder sa Republic Act 6713? Because as public officials manggod, gina-prohibit manggod ta to become substantial stockholders of a corporation as a general rule, but there are exceptions. Why? Because I myself is a substantial stockholder of a certain corporation, but I will tell you later on as to why I fall under the exceptions. Nasabtan?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Family of a public official or employee means your spouse and unmarried children under 18 years of age. Person includes natural and juridical persons unless the context indicates otherwise. Natural persons, kita mga tao. Juridical persons are corporations, partnerships, associations, co-op, kana. These are juridical persons. Why? Because these fake persons can act on their own because they are by fiction of law, meaning tungod sa balaod, gihatagan sila powers or personalities that can act as an individual. Conflict of interest arises when a public official or employee is a member of a board, an officer, or a substantial stockholder of a private corporation or owner or has a substantial interest in a business, and the interest of such corporation or business or his rights or duties therein may be opposed to or affected by the faithful performance of official duty. Conflict of interest happens when magbangga ang imuhang interest sa interest sa imuhang trabaho. For example, as a public, di ba ako ang public prosecutor din sa tuang sa jurisdiction. So, but that does not mean that I am immune to being a victim of crime. So there was one time na kaning katabang namo nangawat sa amo o kwarta, cellphone. So akong gibuhat is nag-file kog kaso sa iyaha. Lami paminawon di ba kay ikaw na gud ang fiscal. Sayo, sure di ka na sayon kay ni ma-file kay ikaw na gud ang fiscal sa region. But what I did was, since ako ang public officer dire sa prosecutor's office, na ako'y conflict of interest kay na ako'y interest over a person that I should file a case against with, and ako mismo ang prosecutor within the region. So what I did was, para walay conflict of interest, I asked another prosecutor to handle the case, and I inhibited myself na mag-take over sa case sa among katabang because it is very unethical and very unprofessional of me. So what I did was, wala gyud ko'y pakialam, anak ko, sir, mag-file ako case to my fellow prosecutor, anak ko, mag-file ko case against among katabang kay gawatan ko actually ilang gawat nag-estapa pa sa kuha nang hulam og dakong kwarta unya last part wa day ni duty. So ngana. So moto, I left that complaint to another prosecutor and I did not handle it myself because there will be conflict of interest. Nakuha ninyo ang at least man ang gist ng conflict of interest.
Yes, sir.
Oo, sir.
So maski I feel powerful over my job, still nag-run over gyapon sa ako, nagadagan gyapon sa ako ang ethical standards that has been instilled to us as public prosecutors. Tumo na dapat kamo pod learn how to know when there is conflict of interest and learn when to inhibit yourselves. Divestment is the transfer of title or disposal of interest in property by voluntarily, completely, and actually depriving or dispossessing oneself of his right or title to it in favor of a person or persons other than his spouse and relatives as defined in this act. When you say divestment, you divest yourself of properties in favor of a third person. Usually, common ni siya if, for example, nagkautang ka, unya gigukod imong properties. So imong gibuhat is i-divest na ako akong properties to a third person, let's say sa ako ang cousin, kay para dito sa ako ibutago. Mao na siyang divestment. Usually ginagamit na sa mga tao na unsa na naay gihimong masama. Relatives refers to any and all persons related to a public official or employee within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, including bilas, inso, and balae. Do you know how to count your relatives kung within the fourth civil degree ba sila or of consanguinity or affinity? Do you know?
Dili, sir.
Dili? Ala ka. Sige ha. Sige. Wait ha. Padayon mo man ang sharing, no? Sige, let's makita ninyo tanan.
Yes, sir.
O, sige ha. Tudloan ta mo kung unsa pag count sa relatives within the fourth civil degree or unsang degree pa ba na. Insert. Asa ang shape. Okay. Aha. Okay. Let's say kamo ni. Ikaw ni, di ba? Kunya, nakay mama ug papa, di ba? Let's say. Papa ni mo ni let's say, mama ni mo. Class, are you still with me? Konting tiis lang ha,
Yes,
para
sir. Yes,
masabtan ninyo. Para masabtan ninyo kung how to count. Let's say you want to know pila ka degree mo sa imong uncle na brother sa imong papa. Let's say kani ang imong uncle. Kani imong uncle. Okay. So, let's count ha. Tapos mo ni imong okay. So let's say this is you, kaning circle, right? And you want to know kung unsang level ang inyong relationship with your uncle, kung within the fourth civil degree, third degree, second degree. So what do you do is you trace your family lineage. So how are you related to your uncle? Let's say he is the brother of your father. Mo imong papa ang kaning square. So what do you do is you count through using the line of your common ancestry. So sa imong papa, that's 1. To your grandparents, 2. And then to your uncle, 3. So that means your uncle is your third civil degree relative. Nakuha ninyo? Ayo.
Sir.
Nakuha
Sir.
ninyo? Hello?
Sir, yes, sir.
Nakuha ha? So that means, pag naamoy, pag ang inyong uncle star na ay anak, ikapilang relative ninyo siya? Fourth. Very good. So he or she will be your fourth civil degree relative because you count using through your common ancestry. Because from here, mag-count ka. Through your father, 1. Through your common ancestry ng mga lolos, that's 2. Through your uncle, 3. And through your cousin, 4. So that means your first cousin is your relative within the fourth civil degree. Isa pa, that also means your uncle, who is your father's brother, is a relative within the third civil degree. Your grandparents are your relatives within the second degree of consanguinity. Nakuha ninyo?
Yes, sir.
Alright. Sige.
Opo.
Salita. Alright, yun. So now at least you know how to determine whether your relative is within the fourth civil degree. Usually, pag kita manggod public officers, we are not allowed to cater services na kita gid ang mag-handle if they are relatives within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity or affinity. When you say affinity, di ba imong cousin is fourth civil degree by consanguinity? Ang asawa sa imong cousin na si Star, siya ang imuhang relative within the fourth civil degree of affinity. When you say affinity, he is nahimo siyang relative because of marriage. Nakuha, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sige. Okay, kani. What are the standard norms of conduct of public officials and employees under Republic Act 6713? So, these are your norms. Commitment to public interest. The public officials and employees shall always uphold the public interest over and above your personal interest. All government resources and powers of their respective offices must be employed and used efficiently, effectively, honestly, and economically, particularly to avoid wastage in public funds and revenues. Now, remember the story I told you na dili ako ang nag-act sa complaint, ako ang katabang because there is a conflict of interest, di ba? Because up and over above, nanandigan gyapon ako ang interest, ako ang public interest, and wala na akong giuna, ako ang personal na interest. Second, in the office, in the public prosecutor's office, we make sure that all of our resources are effectively and economically used. How? We do not waste paper. So what we do is, as much as possible, we use scrap paper in dealing with, for example, writings ng namin mga scratch papers, mga ingana. We only use the brand new na mga bond paper if mag-print, if final na yun kay lisod yun ang kwarta sa gobyerno, labi na ka na mag-request kag unsa ka ng items. It's very hard to get resources from the government. So that's why we are very frugal. We're very economic in terms of handling our own items. Next, professionalism. Public officials and employees shall perform and discharge their duties with the highest degree of excellence, professionalism, intelligence, and skill. They shall enter public service with utmost devotion and dedication to duty. They shall endeavor to discourage wrong perceptions of their roles as dispensers or peddlers of undue patronage. So, you have to exude professionalism in front of the public, meaning the way you act, the way you feel, the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you deal with your clients. You should be professional at all times, meaning you should show your skill, intelligence in a manner which would invite people to say that, okay, they have good services because the individuals who are working in this office are all professionals. Justness and sincerity. Kani. Public officials and employees shall remain true to the people at all times. They must act with justness and sincerity and shall not discriminate against anyone, especially the poor and the underprivileged. Labi na sa mga office. Remember, maluoy yun ko sa ako maluoy ba ngari kanato because they cannot afford the services of a private lawyer. So what they do is they hire the services of the public prosecutor in order for them to achieve justice. So it really brings me joy when I see the poor people or the underprivileged happy because they are satisfied with our services. So I hope you too, when you become police officers, you should not discriminate porket dato ang imuhang kliyente, mas paboran nimo imong dato na kliyente over your poor client because you're expecting something from your rich client. No. You should treat them equally, your poor and your rich clients. Now, what else? They shall at all times respect the rights of others and shall refrain from doing acts contrary to law, good morals, good customs, public policy, public order, public safety, and public interest. As a matter of fact, kaming mga lawyers, ang gina-require sa MUA is, ang MUAng image is dapat kung pwede lang anghel. Mao na ang gina-require din sa MUA. Because one wrong move lead us to,
First one of the PSA Royal family. A matchmate, I think. Return.
excuse me, pamute ko.
Kaya,
Thank you. All right. What else? They shall not dispense or extend undue favors on account of their office to their relatives, whether by consanguinity or affinity, except with respect to appointments of such relatives to positions considered strictly confidential or as members of their personal staff, whose terms are coterminous with theirs. For example, well, you already know what my family name is, and our family name is very well known here in Baganga. As a matter of fact, we are one of the biggest families here in Baganga. So every time there is a Monday who seeks services from the public prosecutor's office, dili gyud ako ang nagauna, dili ako ang nagahandle ana. I always refer it to the other prosecutor because for me, out of delicadeza and out of so ba, I want to uphold na just because you're a Monday, I do not want, hindi na ako gusto paborante ka, porket Monday ka, or porket relative ka. As a matter of fact, I don't join, so ba, unsa man gusto na diri ka na reunion. I don't join reunion because, well, burden na on my part because I am a public officer and a public official who holds public office na very sensitive, holds very sensitive cases. So, in a way, I don't want to join reunions because I feel like if I join, basig gamiton ko or basig ipadrino ko or ana ba. As much as possible, hindi ko ga-join. Ana lang. Because yun nga, I want to uphold justness and sincerity when it comes to performing my job. Hindi ko gusto kay tabangin ni kay imong uncle, tabangin ni kay blah 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 blah. As a matter of fact, there was one time na well, we apart from being a Monday, I'm also a pabaonon and a balanay. So that means being a balanay, we are owners of the Carolina Lake. So there was one time one of our servants committed a crime. So they asked, nagprodrino sila sa kuha, ano, sir, basig matabangan yung imong tauhan. Ano ko na, I can help, but I can only help as to the extent of what the law can provide you. But if you ask me to turn black into white and white into black, then forget it. Okay, I don't want to lose my job just because nagmagic ako of your criminal liability. So what I did was, I referred our servant to the public attorney's office, and I told him, salig ka sa PAO because they know how to handle you well. But at the same time, nitabang ko sa iyang case by, kung unsa itong nasa balaod na pwede ti katabangan, tabangan ti ka. So mo na imong mga remedyo. Kung sa imong pilion diha sa remedyo nimo. Kahanto diha lang ako makaya. But if you ask me to remove your offense completely from the records, that is already damaging on my part, and that is already not justness and sincerity and professionalism on my part. So mao na siya. So it's lisod on my part because I have to say no to my servants, but that is the rule of law. That is what is mandated from me as a public officer and most especially as a public prosecutor. So I hope you learned something. Okay, when you become police officers, as much as possible, you may help, especially your family members, but ayaw po nang to the point na nagmagic na ka. That is already way beyond the scope of your job. You can help, but help kung unsa ang na or gi-provide sa balaod. Nakuha, class?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Pwede mag-ask ng question, sir?
Sure.
Di ba, naka-remember ka itong nag-chat ka sa imo, sir, gani, itong case? Sir, kuan ba ka nang mag-ask lang ko kung pwede na mo ireklamo sa police gani, sir, kay bias kayo, sir, as in. Super.
Failure to render help or duty sa inyo ha. Pwede mo mag-file ano siya ha. Nala sa revised penal code. And remember,
sir, di ba sige, sir, continue sa sir.
Remember, di ba, in your human relations, when a police officer fails to render help on your part, apart from being criminally liable, he could also be held liable for damages. Remember, Mr. Zona?
Yes, sir. Ihadlok lang kami, sir, kay Basin. Oh my God. Kay kuan man God, sir, natingala lang mi, sir, ba kay katong yakadto kami sang sir, sang police station. Ilangan kami, sir, na by next week mabalik kami kay ang investigator daw kay positive daw ng COVID ba? Ay COVID daw naglaong, sir, doon. Yakuanan kay sir pagpauli namin pagkahapon, sir, then anga nga i-complainan gani namin, sir, kay yakadto yung police, sir.
Okay.
Mayati nga kami nung nasa yakadto dahil niya na wala pa man.
No, like for example, on his part, if nag-lodge ka mo ng complaint against that certain police officer, kung aon delikadesa naan, kung aon Republic Act 6713 naan, dapat dili yan mo involved directly because it is against him. Dapat lain na police officer ing mo hawid saan, di ba? If we discuss, di ba? If we discuss it, kung saan doon natunan karon ba? Di ba, Mr. Zona?
Yes, sir.
So at least, di ba? Pwede na ka makipag-argue dito, Mr. Zona. Are you aware of Republic Act 6713 or the Code of Conduct for public officers and public employees? So, di ba? Mahadlok na ng police officer sa imo ha. Kaya you are already nakabaon na kagbalaod na pwede mo gamiton against him or her. That is why knowledge of the law becomes useful because you can use it actively in reality.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Donald. Sige, padayon ta. Dapat pangutana diha. Wala. Alright, sige. Let's move on to political neutrality. As a public officer, you should be neutral when it comes to your political beliefs. Public officials and employees shall provide service to everyone without unfair discrimination and regardless of party affiliation or preference. So, again, let's go back to my lineage one day. Di porket my uncle is the mayor here in Baganga, unahon ako ang iyang affiliates sa kuang office? Of course not. As a matter of fact, I will not handle them. I will let the other prosecutors handle his affairs. Ang sa kuha is what is fair, what is needed at the moment by these people. Ihatag na ako regardless of party affiliation or preference. But again, basta mo day careful yung ko ana. Di ko naga-deal or di labi na pag political unsa kay as much as possible. I want to divide the local government unit, which is being held by Amonday, and our office, the public prosecutor, as separate entities, and they are not just the same. Kana kung gusto yun na, magkalahi lahi akong role, and as much as possible ako neutral when it comes to dealings with criminal cases. Responsiveness to the public officials and employees shall extend prompt, courteous, and adequate service to the public. Kaniha, prompt, courteous, and adequate service to the public. Usahay, di ba, kumuha to ganit ito ba, sa mga government offices, kasi mga swapang diha, ang mga tiguang, di ba, kanang mga, di ba gina sila courteous, kanang mga good morning, ma'am. Unsa may kinanglan nimo? Ikaw pa'y kasabaan mo, you are supposed to serve. Why are you mad at me? If you do not love your job, then get out of your job. Di ba? Marag ana ba? Marag wala sila candor, wala sila joy in serving the public.
Mga attitude.
Attitude mo. Mo na ka nang makapisog, basta yung mga laong saan, makagid, makapisog ka na. Kay agkagay kadamnan. Anyway, unless otherwise provided by law or when required by the public interest, public officials and employees shall provide information of their policies and procedures in clear and understandable language, ensure openness of information, public consultations and hearings whenever appropriate, encourage suggestions, simplify and systemize policy rules and procedures, avoid red tape, and develop an understanding and appreciation of the socioeconomic conditions prevailing in the country, especially in the depressed rural and urban areas. Now, what we do in our office, in the public prosecutor's office, is that once someone files a complaint, we give them an understanding of what will happen to the case. So we will enlighten or educate them that your case may be dismissed or your case may have merit and may be elevated to the courts. That depends on the handling prosecutor who will review your complaint. So ana, i-lay down yun na muna sila kung sa'y possibilities. So that is one way of being responsive to your servants and to the public. What else? Nationalism and patriotism. Public officials and employees shall at all times be loyal to the Republic, to the Filipino people, promote the use of locally produced goods, resources, and technology, and encourage appreciation and pride of country and people. They shall endeavor to maintain and defend Philippine sovereignty against foreign intrusion. So, kaning nationalism and patriotism, gina-display na mo ni siya by, unsa, ambot, kung mapansin niyo, di ba, flag ceremony me every Mondays. Kung napansin niyo ang government offices, di ba, flag ceremony. And during Fridays, by the end of work, flag ceremony na pud me. So, that is one way of showing nationalism and patriotism to our Republic of the Philippines. Any questions so far?
None, sir.
Uy, sigurado mo ka?
Sigurado, sir, Char.
Ako yung makulbaan ka mo yung ba? So, di ka mo mangutana ba? Okay, commitment to democracy. Public officials and employees shall commit themselves to the democratic way of life and values, maintain the principle of accountability, and manifest by deeds the supremacy of civilian authority over the military. They shall at all times uphold the Constitution and put loyalty to country above loyalty to persons or party. Meaning you are committed to the democratic way of life. When you say democratic way of life, you allow individuals to air out their grievances, especially if they are not satisfied with the services you have given, and take that as a positive note and improve your office in the near future. Lastly, kani simple living. Kani gyud ang uban na maglagot kog tan-aw. Public officials and employees and their families shall lead modest lives appropriate to their positions and income. They shall not indulge in extravagant or ostentatious display of wealth in any form. I have a lot of I know a lot of people na porket ang ilang parents, they are the mayors, they are the governors, they are the congressmen of a certain region unya. Kuya na kayo sila maka-display og wealth. I mean, they should have been properly educated that when you are in public service, you should lead a modest life and you should not display this extravagant display of wealth in any form. Kay makalain tanawon ba? Diba? Anyway, bahala sila. What else? These are the mandated duties of public officials and employees. So letter A, act promptly on letters and requests. Sorry ha, nakatawa ko. Usahay mo kung guilty ko ani ka ng malate kung submit isa. So, because nga, I am the handling prosecutor of District 1. Since I am the youngest. So talagang yung trabaho na halos sa kuha. So mao na say malate kung mag-guilty ko ani letter A. But anyway, I do my best in order to remedy the problem. So all public officials and employees shall within 15 working days from receipt thereof respond to letters, telegrams, and other means of communication sent by the public. The reply must contain the action taken on the request. In short, dapat prompt ka in responding to letters and requests. What else? Submit annual performance report. So, what we do with the National Prosecution Service is that tanang among ipambuhat, these are recorded and these are forwarded to the regional office and from the regional office to the Department of Justice. That is one way of keeping in track whether or not your employees or the public officers are doing their job. So this is for record tracking. This is for looking at how well you perform when it comes to certain tasks. So muna, you have to submit an annual performance report. What else can you process documents and papers expeditiously? All official papers and documents must be processed and completed within a reasonable time from the preparation thereof, and must contain, as far as practicable, not more than 3 signatories therein. In the absence of duly authorized signatories, the official next in rank or officer in charge shall sign for and in their behalf. So what this means is that when you process certain requests, and you have to be expeditious, meaning pas dapat imong work. But again, guilty ko ani. Sige lang. Your professor or your teacher will endeavor to do his job better. Anyway, act immediately on the public's personal transactions. All public officials and employees must attend to anyone who wants to avail himself of the services of their offices and must at all times act promptly and expeditiously. Murag paigo lagi ko ani ay lagi paspasan na nako. Anyway, make documents accessible to the public. All public documents must be made accessible to and readily available for inspection by the public within reasonable working hours. So that is by virtue of your what? Freedom of information, meaning public documents may be viewed by the public because you are entitled to freely inspect and be informed of information. What else? These are the prohibited acts and transactions for any public official and employee. Kani. Financial and material interest. Public officials and employees shall not directly or indirectly have any financial or material interest in any transaction requiring the approval of their office. So muna. As public prosecutor, as much as possible, as much as possible, dapat dili gyud magdawat og bribery. Muna, ang lawyers or prosecutors prone to kanang patyon kay because we are very bribable. Muna, on my part, dili man mi pangpatyon if wala ka ni engage og illegal activities, di ba? Wala kang inapakan tao. Muna, I tell you, if you have plans to become a lawyer, you must have solid background on your ethical, moral, and psychological morals. What else? Outside employment and other activities related thereto. Public officials and employees during their incumbency shall not, number 1, own or control, manage, or accept employment as officer, employee, consultant, counsel, broker, agent, trustee, nominee in any private enterprise, regulated, supervised, or licensed by their office unless expressly allowed by law. In short, for example, ako, I am already a prosecutor. I cannot engage myself as a lawyer from a law firm in another enterprise because our office receive criminal complaints from law offices, from certain other interagency offices, or from the police officers. So in that way, kung ako nahimo pang lawyer at the same time from another firm, there will be conflict of interest. So muna prohibited siya because ang imuhang interest will be also affected on how you perform your job as a public prosecutor. What else? Engage in a private practice of their profession unless authorized by the Constitution or law, provided that such practice will not conflict or tend to conflict with their official functions. Now, for example, kani, hala sir, ano may tudlo man ka? Okay. Allowed siya. Why? Because although I am exercising my profession, which is to educate students regarding the law, wala man ko nag-lawyering in behalf of Dorsu. Wala man ko nag-prosecute in behalf of Dorsu. So that's why allowed ko to become a professor by night or by hapon or whenever I'm free sa ako ang job as being a prosecutor. What else? Recommend any person to any position in a private enterprise which has a regular or pending official transaction with their office. So, yan eh. When you are a public officer, you cannot just recommend any person to be a head of another enterprise of which such enterprise is being regulated by your by your um, by your department or by your office. For example, ako, moingon ko, kani si Tarzona, may man siyang police, so ikaw, ibutang siya diha sa Manganga Municipal Police Station. Imo na to siyang head diha. So I cannot do that because that is a prohibited transaction. Now, these prohibitions shall continue to apply for a period of 1 year after resignation, retirement, or separation from public office, except in the case of subparagraph B2 above, but the professional concerned can practice his profession in connection with any matter before the office he used to be with, in which case the 1 year prohibition shall likewise apply. So for example, di ba prosecutor ko ron? So let's say I decide to move to private practice. I, for 1 year, cannot deal with hindi ko pwede makipag-deal with the prosecutor's office for 1 year kay gikan naman ko dito. Modagan ang 1 year prohibition na. Now, any questions so far? Wala?
Wala, sir.
Hello? Nakuha?
Ako po.
Okay. Isa pa, also may prohibited actions, disclosure and or misuse of confidential information. So, come on, for example, as policemen, you should not disclose confidential matters or informations to the public because what if detrimental siya sa public safety, sa safety sa imuhang client, sa safety sa imuhang priso, it may prejudice the public interest or it may prejudice or give undue advantage to anyone. Next, solicitation or acceptance of gifts. Again, dapat dili mo mag-solicit. What is only allowed are nominal gifts of little value. Okay, so required statements and disclosure to be made by public officials and employees. So public officials and employees have an obligation to accomplish and submit declarations under oath, and the public has the right to know their assets, liabilities, net worth, and financial and business interests, including those of their spouses and unmarried children under 18 years of age living in their household. So when you become public officers, you are required to disclose to you who is your spouse, how much assets you have, how much liabilities you have, how much is your net worth, and anything which is of financial nature. So all right, so when you become police officers, you will be required to submit your SAL-N, your statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth. So this is an example of your SAL-N. Actually, SAL-N ni siya ni Benigno Aquino. So you can see there his name, his position, office address, his assets, liabilities, and net worth. When you say assets, kung sa man itong mga properties na nagpadungag sa imuhang current net worth, so that means your lots, mo mga kayutaan. So you can see that as of 2014, his assets are around 32 million in terms of real properties. Plus tapos siya ay personal properties amounting to 35 million. So all in all, he has a 68 million net worth. Liabilities, o sa maning liabilities, kanang anything which tends to reduce your net worth. So sa maning siya mga utang, mga bayronon ninyo. So according here, walay utang si Aquino at the time of 2014. What else? Okay, si your favorite senator, Cheese Escudero. Oh yeah. So money yung assets, liabilities niya, kaya nala siya utang na 3 million as of 2015. And another sample of Cheese Escudero's SALN. So apart from that, in your SALN, you need to disclose your business interests. So for example, kanin siya yung mga businesses that you are involved. So you have to put here. Like for example, ako, we own a family corporation. I am the vice president of VLI. I was tasked to become one, but it will not be against the office of the National Prosecution Service because our transactions are purely commercial, and the transactions in the National Prosecution Service are of criminal in nature. So mauna, layo kayo. So allowed ko to be the vice president of a certain corporation. But I have to declare it in my SALN na vice president ko and pila ka% akong stocks. So gibutan po dito ko pila ka% akong stocks. Apart from that, you have to declare that who are your relatives in the government service. So ako, I have a relative within the 4th civil degree na first cousin ako. She's a lawyer in the public attorney's office. So i-declare na ko na siya. Plus, i-declare po na ko akong sister because my sister is a government doctor or physician in the Southern Philippines Medical Center. So kana i-declare po na ko na siya. So ibutang na ko sila sa relatives in the government service. So you need to identify and disclose your relatives, and your documents will be accessible by anyone because it is of public nature. Now, it shall be unlawful for any person to obtain or use any statement filed under this act for any purpose contrary to morals or public policy, or any commercial purpose other than by news and communications, media, or dissemination to the general public. In short, you are prohibited from using the document, your SALN, for the purpose of what? For any purpose which is contrary to morals or public policy. And you may not use it for commercial purposes. The end. Any questions so far?
Wala, sir.
Wala. Sure ka na sabtan ninyo. Actually, dali naman siya sabton kay nakabutang na mangundaan kung unsa what you need not do and what you need to do. Okay? Sige, let's have a 5-minute break and then let's continue with human rights. Okay? Ayo. Anong gana?
Sir, yes, sir.
Let's just have a 5-minute break, okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay.